So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged, and this is another scenario that was made on Horton's Discord, although I think this is a sort of redone version of it. I think Escal Nordia edited the GUNDABAD scenario a little bit so that it's a little bit different than what you may have seen before. I've never actually personally shown this map before. I have been given replays on it before, but the last one I was given was over 90,000 frames long, and it was on a 3v3 pitch battle version of it, which is why I was very reluctant to do that one, because there was probably shenanigans involved which led to the battle being elongated far longer than it should have been. Regardless, the links to the ModDB, the Mod of the Year vote award, both of the Discords and the timestamp of the battle starting will be in the description below, so if you don't want any of this ancillary stuff, you can skip right to the action. And also I hope you do vote for this as your Mod of the Year for 2017, because it certainly is mine, of course. A little bit biased perhaps, but even so. So now we'll have a look at the army compositions, and as I said, Escal Nordia did send this one in, so thank you to him. He's always been a bit of a fixture on the Discords for the past few months, and he's started making scenarios now, which is good, a bit of variety. And now we have his army, and his army I believe is the most elite of the three defending armies. I think it's 3v4, and there are 2 Dwarven defenders and 1 Arnorian defender. So this is a somewhat historical siege of Mount Gundabad, I suppose, when the Orcs took it. So he has got some Dwarven Noblemen. Is this his general's unit? Yes, it is. So the Dwarven Noblemen, not the best of the Dwarven Heavy Infantry, but they are still very, very strong. And the general unit, and the general not being in a unit like the Mithril Guard, means that the Mithril Guard can be used a little bit more freely. And he also has the Sons of Durin, and of course the Guards of Khazad-dûm. So all of his very elite forces concentrated right here at the back. 2 units of Guards of Khazad-dûm. He's also got some Sons of the Fallen and some Dragon Slayers. This is an incredibly strong sort of last bastion defense of the dwarves right here, back where the town centre should be, I think. Regardless, this is still a siege. So then we will move on to the second of the defending armies, which I believe is Goddess Nimhain. Yes, indeed, and he's playing as the Kingdom of Arnor. Again, a very solid defensive faction, although for different reasons than the dwarves. You know, the dwarves are very good armor-piercing melee units with a lot of hit points. Arnor tend to be more about their skirmish superiority over most factions. The Arnorian Peacekeepers are honestly not the best unit in the current patch. They will be receiving a little bit more love in the next patch, but as it is, this sort of standard Spearman of Arnor it does the job, but in a sort of 1v1 I would never personally pick them, but of course in a scenario your armies are assigned, so it doesn't really matter. These guys will hold the line at least against lower tier Orc units relatively easily. Then over here he's got the Dunedain Troll Slayers again. A limited amount of ammunition on these guys. They are very strong though. They will be able to take down trolls, of course, very, very quickly. And elite units will want to stay out of their range as well. And they are, of course, multiple HP, and they pull out armor-piercing axes in melee. The only unit for Arnor in the current patch that is genuinely AP. And then over here he has the Dunedain Bodyguard, or the Steel Bowmen, to give them their old name. And of course I believe this is where his general is. Is this the Arnorian general? I think it is. And then, of course, you know, the Dunedain Bodyguard, they have more ammunition than the Troll Slayers. I think they do slightly less damage at range, but more ammo means they'll get more killing done over a longer period of time, and they, of course, double as very effective infantry units as well. His army's a little bit more scattered. And then we can have a look at another one of his archer positions over here. Arnorian Heavy Archers, just a sort of very standard archer. They're slightly more armoured than their brethren. And then back here he's got some Arthur Dane Men-at-Arms. The Arthur Dane Men-at-Arms are a very good standard mainline unit. Not as good as the Dol Amroth Men-at-Arms, but still very good. I think because they have slightly less men in the unit. And then back here we have the centre of the Arnorian infantry force, the dismounted Dunedain Knights. Of course, these guys will hold against low-tier Orcs all day long. They will struggle against some of the higher-tier stuff from Gundabad and Mordor in particular, though, and the Blackback Berserkers from the Misty Mountains. And then we have over here some Arnor Pikemen. In my opinion, they are the best standard pikemen in the game at the moment, because the Uruk-hai pikemen are just a little bit too expensive, and the Arnor Pikemen do exactly the same job most of the time, but for a little bit less. So the Arnor Pikemen, very good unit, very good centre to the Arnorian army. Then over here we have the Arnorian Cavalry, the Knights of Anuminas, of course, very, very effective. I think this is 2 units of Knights of Anuminas as well. So these guys are going to really wreak some havoc in the Orc lines, provided they are unchecked. If they don't get bogged down in melee against the elite Orcish units, the Knights of Anuminas should run down a huge amount of the attacking armies. Then over here we have a look at the last force of Arnor, although it's still a very strong one. We have more dismounted Dunedain Knights, more Arthur Dane Men-at-Arms, and then we have some more Arnorian Pikemen. And then at the front over here we have the Arnor Gate Guards, the most durable single pike unit in the game at the moment, but I do actually think the Imladris Guards are a little bit better. Despite having 1 less HP than these guys, the Imladris guards do have significantly better melee stats, which means they get their killing done very quickly. Having said that, the Arnor Gate guards still look incredibly cool, and they are of course very, very brutally effective. And if we move over to here, to the third and the final of the defending armies, we actually do have the High Elves, so I was wrong, it's not 2 Dwarven armies, and we will get to see the Imladris guards, I think, but here are the Imladris Storm Guard. They are worse than the Mithlon Nobles in the current patch, as has been said before, but they will still do a very, very good job, of course. High Elven infantry, known for its quality. And over here we've got some Noritano warriors, very accurate, very long range. They won't do too well in a straight skirmish fight because they don't have any HP or much armour, and also when they do run out of ammunition they aren't really too good as infantrymen, but you know, they will still get the job done. At long range they can still be a real hassle, especially on lightly armoured, unshielded targets. And if we look over here, we've got some Quindi, the Sword Quindi of course. This is a unit model which will be a unit style at least that will be transferring over to Linden in the next patch of course, whereas Imladris will be the more armoured sort of variant. But the Sword Quindi always going to form the backbone of the High Elven army in a standard match, simply because they're always that you can afford to bulk out your army. Other than these guys, the Linden Longspears, although I've never been a fan of the Linden Longspears, the fact that they use the Halberdier animation makes them it makes them a lot worse than most other standard pikemen, to be honest with you, and that's why I never choose to bring them. Having said that, they will still do a job at holding the line provided they're backed up, but the Halberdier animation really hobbles these guys, and always has done as well. I've never liked them. We also have some Imladris guards over here, of course, much better pike unit in my opinion, the best current pike unit in the game for the reasons that I've already mentioned. And if we look over here at the scattered forces going through the wintry trees, we have more Imladris guards, and then over here we have more Quindi, more Storm Guard, more Linden Longspears as well. Then if we have a look over to here, we can have, yes, the Elder Enway Archers, my favourite unit in the game of course. And then we have a catapult, the first artillery piece we've seen, more Noritano warriors, and then back here I assume we've got the elite heavy infantry of the Elves, actually no more Elder Enway Archers, some Mithlon Nobles, some Smiths of Eregion, the mighty Warhammers, that AP damage, a unit of Elder Enway Spearmen, and the Noldor Elder Nobles, of course. Noldor Elders with Elrond in the unit, they're going to be, you know, as a single archer unit, they are the best in the game at the moment, but the Elder Enway Archers will still outskirmish them because of how many men they have in the unit. So that is the defenders. We'll move on to the attackers, but before I do, I will mention that the only rules in this scenario is that all 5 of the outer choke points must be used. So the attackers cannot concentrate on one front and try and smash through alone. They have to advance on all fronts, which honestly I think helps the attackers in many senses, because it means they can spread their armies wider, and when you have more men, that's always what you want to do. So it kind of just forces the attackers to not be fools, in my opinion. But nonetheless, we shall move on to the attackers. And first of all, we have Bobo 16k playing as the Orcs of Gundabad. We have some Snow Trolls here, going to be very good at forcing their way through, particularly the outer High Elven defences with their lightly armoured Quindi. Moving on, we have the Rudal Berserkers and of course Gundabad. Their strength in depth cannot be overstated, and it means that they will be able to deal with a lot of these elite High Elven, Arnorian and Dwarven units later on in the game. The Rudal Berserkers, of course, with their AP, will be much better served going after the Dwarves and Arnor. We also have these Rudar Heavy Pikes. They're the only pikemen in the game at the moment to have a shield value, and I think that will be a trait that they keep going into the next patch, which does give Rudauer a very strong anchor going forward, but it also, at the moment, gives Gundabad that very strong anchor. We also have a couple of units of Gundabad Guard at the front here. Spearmen, not the best on the attack, but they will still hold, and they will still form a very nice centre to the Gundabad attack. Back here we also have some Rudauer Savages, of course. Nice low-tier Axemen. I think functionally they are basically the same as the Riddermark Axemen, only they are slightly less survivable, but they are also 100 florins cheaper. So that's the best way to look at the Rudauer Savages, in my opinion. As we move out into the sun, being blocked mostly by Mount Gundabad. We also have these Guardians of Kharn, very strong centre to the Gundabad attack as well. These guys are going to hold all day against most of the stuff. The only thing that will be really able to quickly take them down are the most elite High Elven and Dwarven units that are on display. However, for that, we have the Hammer Guard. Very nice AP values, a huge charge on these guys, which is really the main selling point to them. If they can get that charge off, they're going to be able to get some really nice damage done. We've also got some Witchround Blackguard, so a real display of elite units on both sides. The Blackguard are a very strong unit, of course, AP. And then back here we have some Orc Marauders in loose formation. They will probably be sent forward first, simply because they are the fodder. Now we shall move on to Froggy's army, and he is also playing as the Orcs of Gundabad. The Witchround Pikemen are a unit that weren't in the previous army. And the Witch Realm Pikemen, of course, armoured. They're not quite as good as the Rudar Heavy Pike simply because they don't have a shield value, but functionally in melee they are basically the same unit. Now we shall move backwards to have a look at some of these Witch Realm Scourge Raiders. Again, these guys, you want to keep them out of the arrow fire, because if you get them into melee they can do a huge amount of damage. They punch well above their weight in melee, but to counteract this they have a huge weakness to arrows, so you really want to keep them out of that High Elven fire. And unfortunately for Froggy, he is facing down the High Elves. The Trolls of Gundabad, they're slower than the Snow Trolls, but they have armour and they are more effective in melee. And then over here we have some of the similar units. Witch Realm Hammer Guard, Gundabad Guard. He's got some Black Uruks. The Black Uruks are a nice and effective sort of mid to high tier shock unit. They do cost quite a lot. I think it's like 700 or 800 florins. They want to be kept out of the arrow fire as well, but if they get into melee they can do some cost effective trading with pretty much all of the factions they're facing down, which is nice for them. Some Guardians of Kharndoom, some more Hammer Guard, and sort of similar units to what Bobo was deploying. Now we shall move on to Master Blaster, playing as the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. He's got some Mountain Uruk archers here at the front, and that is something worth saying as well, that Gundabad's skirmish force is terrible and is non-existent in the previous two armies, it would seem. The Misty Mountains do slightly better in this regard. Their Mountain Uruk archers are decent. They don't have too many men in the unit though, which might count against them in an outright skirmish fight. He's got some Mountain Uruk pikes as well. Not quite as good as the pikemen from Gundabad, but they will still get the job done. Then back here he's got some heavy goblin infantry. Good armour values for their tier, of course, as I always say, and you can see they're spread out all across the hill, as far as the eye can see. And then if we move back here, we've got more Mountain Uruk pikes. But also over here, we can see that he does have a catapult, which may well prove to be very, very important going into the later stages. He's got 2 units of the Blackwatch Legion, which are going to be absolutely vital to sort of smashing down those Arnorian pike lines. And if we look over here, he's got some heavy goblin crossbowmen, which again, the Misty Mountains have got a lot of units, which if they're used wisely, could well win them the battle. He's got a unit of Snow Trolls, and then back here the Orc Bodyguards, where his general surely resides. And then finally, we have Arcturus playing as the Orcs of Gundabad as well. He's got some Witch Realm Inquisitors and some Warg Skirmishers, so these guys are obviously going to be the main counteracting force to those Knights of Innuminas, which are surely going to come marauding down the hill almost immediately. So he has some Black Uruks of the mountains as well. His army is very spread out, so we'll just have a look at it from here. Orc Marauders, sort of spread out across the front line. Black Uruks of the mountains, more Snow Trolls. He's got some Rudal Berserkers as well, and then in the back he'll have all of his elites like the Guardians of Kharndoom and his Witch Realm units. So, without further ado, let us begin. So it'll be interesting to see how the attackers first approach this defense, because they do have to use all of the avenues of attack. And going up these initial hills is going to be punishing for them initially, but I do think they will be able to wear down the outer defences, particularly if the dwarves sort of stay in the town centre. I think I did miss some of the dwarven units as well. So we've got some sort of Ironfoot units and Khazad warriors holding the holding the inner choke points of Mount Gundabad. We can see. I'm going to be curious to see what they do with this cavalry as well, because the cavalry, honestly, when the orcs are laying siege to these sort of outer choke points, the cavalry is going to be less useful in here because it will be much more easy to box in. In my opinion, what you want to do with this cavalry is really sort of get it out into the open as quickly as possible and start sort of harassing, making sure that the attackers don't have it all their own way, sort of advancing forward. Make it annoying for the attackers, because that can bait them into mistakes more often than not, especially when you've got a unit as good as the Knights of Innuminas. Nonetheless, I think I will actually make a little cut here, because it does look like the defenders are sort of forming up and trying to sort of bait the attackers into certain attacking choke points. We'll see. Regardless, there is going to be a little bit of a cut made here because the attackers are just marching forwards. So it would appear as though the defenders have decided to abandon the outer layer almost completely, which is interesting. It does mean their forces can be more condensed and a little bit more survivable. The Arnorians and the Dwarves have sort of moved to reinforce one another. The High Elves, it seems, are going to be sort of holding their own hill over here to an extent anyway, which is interesting. I suppose that it's up to the defenders whether they hold the outer 5 choke points, at least if that's the choke points they meant. Maybe they meant the inner choke points, but even so, it seems very odd that the defenders would completely abandon the outer defences. After all, bunching up like this ultimately does mean that they're going to have to face the wrath of that Misty Mountains catapult. Interesting. And we'll see what the Arnorian cavalry does as well, because if they fall back all the way, the cavalry is going to be useless. Then again, so would the attacking cavalry to an extent. The Warg Skirmishers would be able to fire their javelins, but little else. Meanwhile, we can see here the goblin trackers taking a bit of arrow fire, but I doubt the attackers will care too much if their goblins are under arrow fire. If anything, this just means that the defenders are going to have less arrows for the really important targets. So this is a win for the attackers. They've managed to essentially scale the hill and get into the settlement of Mount Gundabad without really having any resistance. Not sure I would count skirmish fire as resistance personally. Meanwhile, if we look over there, the Witch Realm Inquisitors are lurking. The first ones to enter the settlement. The Arnorians have fallen back to the foot of the centre here. We'll see how this goes, but we can also see that Bobo is going to be leading the way on this front. It does look like this is going to be the first of the engagements, and it does seem as well that the High Elves were not able to retreat in time, so they're having to sort of fight back to back in a randomly selected street, which is kind of why I'm surprised the defenders abandoned those outer choke points. I mean, yes, they would. The first two armies, the High Elves and Arnor, basically need to fully commit to those outer choke points in order to defend them effectively, but I still think that was the way to go. I still think that sort of making the attackers really pay on the outer walls and then letting the dwarves finish off whatever is left, because the dwarves could absolutely go toe-to-toe with the elites of these units based on what Escal Nordir's got back in the town centre, because that is a very strong dwarven core, and that is absolutely going to be enough to take on the Gundabad forces, particularly if they had to go through a very strong Arnorian and High Elven outer defence. As it is, though, we have these Numenorian Shadow Guard, and again, skirmishing down lightly armoured targets like the Quindi, although it looks like they're going for the Storm Guard, to be fair, but the Quindi and the Linden Longspears over here are going to get crushed underfoot pretty quickly, I would say. We shall see. Again, I'm not sure I would send the Rudar Savages forward per se, because of course the High Elf and low tier troops are not... Well, that's exactly what I would do, skirmishing down these Linden Longspears, because they are terrible under arrow fire. Getting sprayed down, picking away at the outer defences here, which again it's a very strange decision by the defenders, I think, to do such a thing. Meanwhile, I will say as well that Bobo has run his orcs forward, and they are now all very tired, which is going to be bad for them. They are only orc marauders, but even so, you can actually see these sword Quindi. Seems like they're going to take the initiative and go out and meet the orc marauders, or are they? No, they're just going to bolster the ranks of these Linden Longspears, but they're under skirmish fire, which is bad for them. Meanwhile, let's have a look at what's going on over here. These Warg Skirmishers firing into these Arnor Gate Guards and Arnorian Peacekeepers. This is a big loss. I mean, the Warg Skirmishers, I think the intended use for them would be against the Knights of Illuminas. But the fact that they're getting some really nice kills on these very high tier pikes, it's very bad. Very bad for the Arnorians. Meanwhile, the Arnorians do have an engagement over here against the Witch Realm Inquisitors and the Snow Trolls with their Knights of Illuminas. But they are in full retreat over here as well. There's some fire from the top over there coming from the Arnorian archers. But even so, the Snow Trolls of the Misty Mountains and the Witch Realm Inquisitors from Arcturus, most of these corpses here are Knights of Illuminas. Again, it was only a very minor engagement. You know, the Knights of Illuminas still in pretty good health. They've only lost 8 or so unit models, but even so, it's an interesting choice from the defenders, because it does leave the attackers with a bit of a skirmish advantage down here, honestly. They can sort of start picking away at these outer units, because most of the archers from the defenders have been retreated all the way back. Sort of a waiting game here at the moment on the front line. Bobo's got his Rudar Savages and his Orc Marauders ready to crush these Quindi and Long Spears underfoot, because that is what will happen. They don't stand a chance in this sort of choke point, so these men have had to be left behind. I'm eager to see the infantry battle start. You can see these Warg Skirmishers moving forward. They will probably come under arrow fire from that cliffside over there, but they want those Arnor Gate Guards, don't they? There go the javelin fire. So there was 123 men in this unit of Arnor Gate Guards before the volley of Warg Skirmish fire came in. And that is a decent amount of kills they've got. Again, the Warg Skirmishers are intended to be a heavy cavalry hunter, and that does mean that their javelins pack a lot of venom. And especially against the pike unit that doesn't have any form of shields. Even the hit points won't save the Arnor Gate Guard. So yeah, this is where the retreat is going to really count against the defenders, I've got to say. Because it just means that they are going to be poked and prodded by the attacking skirmishers, and then when they're good and softened up, the hammer will be brought down. And there's no better faction for doing that than Gundabad in the current patch. The Orc Marauders sort of waiting on the periphery. Those Snow Trolls hovering as well with intent. Those Witch Realm Inquisitors. It's making it so that, again, the cavalry is already boxed in. They don't have many good opportunities to charge anymore. If anything, they need to get out of here and go this way and try and attack Froggy and Bobo's army, because over here they're worthless at the moment, to be honest. We'll see if that is what he indeed does, because they are moving around. Meanwhile, I do think that the frontline engagements have started over here. Let's have a look, shall we? Indeed, the Gundabad Guard have moved forward, and the Gundabad Guard, with victory seems certain for the Linden Longspears. That's only because the Gundabad Guard are not actually attacking them. The Gundabad Guard are just sort of forcing their way through. As soon as they engage in melee, they've now crippled the piked formation, which is the one thing the Linden Longspears have in their favour, and now they will get mercilessly destroyed. Interestingly enough, the High Elven Catapult is firing, getting some friendly fire on his own men. Getting a huge amount of friendly fire on his own men. Oh dear. What a disaster. These Black Uruks leading the way. This Quindy doesn't stand much of a chance. Black Uruks and the Orc Marauders combining their forces. A miss from the High Elven Catapult. Another miss from the High Elven Catapult. Oh dear. There's also a lot of skirmish fire coming in from the Gundabad skirmish forces. And now, backing up the forces of the Gundabad Guard, we have the Rudar Savages. Again, their armor piercing is not going to come in too handy here, but just the fact that they're overwhelming this outer High Elven position is, makes it so that the lack of compatibility doesn't really matter. These Linden Longspears, they're shaken. This High Elven Catapult finally manages to get a hit on the outer forces here, on some Gundabad Guard as well, but I mean, out here the damage has already been done. These units of Quindy and Linden Longspears have been wasted, so it's a very bad, not the best start for the defenders. The attackers are having a good time. Again, that's more friendly fire. My oh my. Get in here. Right up close to these Quindy and these Rudar Savages. I do like the Rudar Savages as a unit, the way that they look. The Quindy finding themselves fully surrounded. The Gundabad Guard are pulling out to make sure they don't get hit by the catapult, because the Black Uruks and the Rudar Savages are going to be more than enough to deal with these Quindy when being attacked from both flanks. Interestingly, the Linden Longspears are attacking the Rudar Savages in the back, but there are not nearly enough of them. And these Gundabad Guard are dealing with the bulk of the main unit. Meanwhile, let's have a look at what's going on over here. The Warg Skirmishers still proving a huge problem for the Arnorians. Throwing their javelins into the Arnor pikemen, getting a huge amount of kills on them. Now the Warg Skirmishers are coming under a lot of concentrated arrow fire, which does mean they will start to fall pretty quickly, but at this point the Arnorian pipeline has been savaged by just 2 units of Warg Skirmishers, so honestly Arcturus has already managed to pay for these. What's going on over here? Ah, the Gundabad Guard. Just as I sort of moved away from this, the Knights of Anuminas did indeed come over here to try and assist his allies, and Lord knows they need it. The Orc Marauders are coming forward. Again, another charge is coming in. A counter charge from the Gundabad Guard, but the Knights of Anuminas will reap a heavy toll on these Gundabad Guard. Again, Spearmen are not really an anti-cavalry unit in the current patch. They are just a line-holding unit for their mass. They do pitiful damage against heavy cavalry, to be honest with you, and they didn't get a single kill there. They did counter charge. The charge value of spears is honestly very low, and rightly so. Meanwhile, we have these Knights of Anuminas are now marauding around. Going to get a nice charge into these Black Uruks in the mountains. Interestingly enough, the Black Uruks in the mountains will be a more effective anti-cavalry unit in sustained melee than the Gundabad Guard would be. But they have also taken a much more heavy charge, even in loose formation. The Knights of Anuminas managing to carve through that unit with relative ease. And now this death blob of cavalry is marauding around the battlefield, as it should be. The attackers need to shut down this cavalry, because at this point it might be undoing all of the work they have managed to do thus far. Although there is also a hefty amount of skirmish fire coming in, presumably from Goblin Trackers and Numenorian Shadow Guard, which again, heavy cavalry is going to stand up a lot to skirmish fire such as that, but it's still going to do a lot of chip damage, so the hit points will start to disappear from them. And also now some of the Knights of Anuminas have managed to get themselves caught on these Black Uruks, which does mean that just a few more unit models are probably going to fall. And again, as soon as you take away the sting from cavalry, it's probably when they lose over half their unit models. The charges become a lot less effective. You can actually see the Warg skirmishers from Arcturus sort of coming around here, presumably to try and trap these Knights of Innuminus, get some javelin fire in there as well as the regular arrow fire. You can actually see as well some of those fire arrows coming in from the goblin trackers. Again, fire arrows are not overtly effective, but it doesn't really matter. It looks cool. And they are getting a decent amount of kills on these Arnor pikemen and Arnor gate guards that are... No, not Arnor gate guards, peacekeepers. The peacekeepers are facing the wrong way, so their shields will not be helping them at all, relying fully on their armour values. Meanwhile, if we look over here, these Warg skirmishers again. Just like the brutality of this outer defence here, because like the Arnor gate guards, these Warg skirmishers presumably are out of ammunition. Very lacklustre charge into the men-at-arms, but this is the problem that Arnor, in the way they've set up. They've retreated all of their skirmishers back to the final defence, which has left them no defence at all against the Warg skirmishers. The Warg skirmishers have been able to just batter the Arnor gate guards and the Arnor pikemen. That's a lot of fire arrows coming in here as well. And it does look like the Knights of Innuminus are going to retreat. The Warg skirmishers sort of loitering with intent. The Witch Realm Inquisitors there as well. It's a bit of a see-through building here. The attackers are noticing that. Well, you can just see the fire arrows. It's relentless, really. And that's the thing, like, of course the attackers are going to do this if given the opportunity. Of course they're going to try and skirmish you down, and that's the real problem with how Arnor has set their army up. Their skirmishers just not in a position to help their infantry, which might well cost them the game. Because I think as compositions go, the defenders had what they needed to win this fight with the settlement they were given. You can see these Orc Marauders again. Just look at this unit of Arnor pikemen, only 57 remaining, and they're just going to get smashed to bits by all of these Orc Marauders. And now the Misty Mountains catapult is getting in on the action, getting a nice hit on those Knights of Innuminus. Let's go and see what's going on over here, shall we? To be fair, the Quindi have managed to claim victory here. How? I mean, I know that the Knights of Innuminus got a nice charge, but even so, Black Uruks, Numenorian Shadow Guard, I think it's because these Rudar savages and such are retreating, surely. Gundabad Guard. More Gundabad Guard. Meanwhile, these Black Uruks coming over to presumably try and finish off once and for all these belligerent units of Quindi, which should have been crushed long ago, to be honest. Yeah, the Black Uruks will have what it takes to beat these guys. And that means that the High Elven position, which the Goblin Trackers have been sent forward on their own, which is honestly not a bad idea. If I were the High Elves, I would actually send forward a unit of infantry to deal with these guys rather than wasting my skirmish ammunition on them, because that skirmish ammunition would be much better served going after the high tier units. Meanwhile, what's going on over here? We can actually see the Knights of Innuminus coming back over to this side of the map. They need to be careful though. The Gundabad Guard are not going to let them through easily, and the Warg skirmishers are on their way, and so are the Witch Realm Inquisitors. And this is going to be bad news for the Knights of Innuminus, because they're trying to force their way through, but the Gundabad Guard standing firm. And that is the one saving grace of spears in this current patch. They have got a lot of mass and they're able to hold the line very effectively. I'm not sure why those Witch Realm Inquisitors backed off on that charge, because this would be the ideal situation to quickly finish off these heavy knights. I suppose they don't want them getting skirmished down, but the Witch Realm Inquisitors can take arrow fire all day long as it's not from the Dunedain Troll Slayers. Yeah, this cavalry. This was the problem with using the cavalry within the interior of the settlement. It was always eventually going to get cornered. And they are going to have victory here, but they're taking a lot of losses. And these are important units. Again, these units would have been destroyed, to be fair, if those Witch Realm Inquisitors came in. What are these Snow Trolls doing? The Snow Trolls are running past the Knights of Innuminus as opposed to engaging them, which I find baffling. Some very strange decisions being made on all fronts here. These Knights of Innuminus need to be destroyed outright, right now. Otherwise they could still be a major thorn in the side of the attackers. And Bobo finally realises this and gets the Snow Trolls in, but too late. Knights of Innuminus able to escape. Again, those Witch Realm Inquisitors should have been charged in. They should have extinguished these knights as quickly as possible. Denying the defenders their ability to be aggressive could well make it so that this battle's a foregone conclusion. These knights aren't as effective as they once were, but they can still be a problem for you advancing if they survive. These Snow Trolls are chasing them down, and they are quick. Snow Trolls. What's going on up here? The Goblin Trackers being sent to their deaths. They had obviously run out of ammunition and are being sent into Imladra Storm Guard. And the Storm Guard will, of course, rip them asunder. What is going on over here meanwhile? These Orc Marauders getting ready for an advance into the defensive position. You can see these Orc Marauders as well. And over here it's a similar story to the other side. The outer Arnorian infantry has been completely cut off, and these guys don't have any skirmishers to help them. And so the fire arrows are coming in, and they're targeting the pikemen, and rightly so. The Arnorian pikemen are one of the main strengths of their infantry line as it stands currently. And again, units like Goblin Trackers are not going to get tons of kills, but they're going to do damage, and that's, you know, chipping away at this outer line. I'm very confused as to why the defenders have sat up as they have. We do have a bit of a skirmish phase going on, and for once in a siege it's in favour of the attackers. The Gundabad Guard setting up there, making sure that a counter-attack cannot come down the hill. And the defenders have made their bed, and now they must lie in it. They must basically defend their two hilltops, and that's it. Meanwhile, we can see that the Knights of Innuminus are still alive. The Goblin Trackers are routing. The Warg Skirmishers are trying to hunt them down. These 5 Knights of Innuminus. Again, the Knights of Innuminus giving these Wargs the runaround. It's not exactly a battle of the fastest cavalry units in the game. The Wargs have never been extremely quick, and the Knights of Innuminus are probably tired at this point. Indeed they are. So now the melee begins once again. Mounted combat. The Knights of Innuminus could honestly win this fight. The Warg Skirmishers are not quite the same, don't have quite the same potency in melee, obviously, as the Warg Riders. But the Warg Skirmishers have already more than paid for themselves. They managed to get kills on Arnor Gate Guards and Knights of Innuminus aplenty. So just the fact that they're going to get a few more kills here. Again, I think that the Witch Realm Inquisitors are needed. The Witch Realm Inquisitors will be of no use to the attackers in the final assault. So they should have been committed to destroy the Knights of Innuminus earlier, in my opinion. But we shall see. The full melee of this fight has yet to begin, honestly. And we are 16k frames into the battle. We'll see how this plans out. These Knights of Innuminus are going to have victory, honestly. Meanwhile, over here you can see Arcturus' army still just waiting, you know, still skirmishing. You can see that there's some Numenorian Shadow Guard over here. Do they still have ammunition? They do. And they're going to be firing point blank, presumably into the Arnor Gate Guards. What are they shooting at, I wonder? They seem to be sporadically firing. The unit is not firing as one. Now they are. So let's have a look. There's 63 Arnor Gate Guards.
In the course of battle, but defeat seems almost certain.
Again, they do have HP, and they are well armoured, so this fire will not be quite as deadly to them as the Warg Skirmisher fire was. But again, these Arnor Gate Guards have done nothing in the battle so far, and they're just being skirmished into the dirt. And the Arnorian infantry it's not in a good place. It is surrounded. And not all of the attacking armies are even up into the settlement yet. You can see around the outside, there's still units in the background, units of elite infantry waiting. Mounted Uruk pikes being sent forward. These Orc Marauders again. The Dunedain bodyguard are firing at the Mounted Uruk pikes, but again, you shouldn't be using your elite skirmishers, your most elite skirmisher unit, on a unit like Mountain Uruk pikes. Like, the Dunedain bodyguard should really be being used on like late game stuff. Man, I would take a really nice screenshot if these Arnorian heavy archers weren't ruining it completely by running through the unit. There we go. Now then, back to the business at hand, because it does finally look like we're going to get a melee engagement. The most honourable form of combat. And these Mountain Uruk pikes being sent forward first. Because of the skirmish fire they're taking, they are also losing, and they probably won't get a chance to set up their pike formation. But again, the fact that they're using Dunedain bodyguard ammunition to do this means this is still a win for the attackers, in my opinion. He's got some heavy goblin infantry ready to come in and reinforce this assault. And again, this is a thick line of Arnorian peacekeepers being backed up by a slightly damaged unit of Arnor Gate Guards. But even so, it's good to see that the melee has finally gotten underway. On both sides as well. Interestingly enough, the Númenórean Shadow Guard being sent forward on their own. Bit of a waste, to be honest with you, because the Númenórean Shadow Guard melee stats are not fantastic because of their low armour, but they're not terrible either. They should really be being reinforced by Orc Marauders if they're going to be committed forward at all. But regardless, we do have some dismounted Dunedain Knights on this side to reinforce the even more damaged unit of Arnorian Gate Guards. The Orc Marauders from Arcturus being moved around as well, presumably ready to begin their attack in earnest. It does look like, again, if I were the attackers, I would definitely single out the Arnorian infantry first, crush it underfoot. What is going on here? Going after the Ironfoot Guard and the Dragon Slayers. The Dragon Slayers are a good choice for the catapult. If they get just one nice hit on that, that's a unit of very elite Dwarven infantry that has taken some hefty losses. But again, it remains to be seen. Now then, back over here, defeat still seems certain. Still taking skirmish fire into the front lines from those Dunedain bodyguard. You can see that these Mountainuric pikes, they're not going to be a match for the more elite Arnorian pikes. But even so, the frontline engagement has started, and they will be doing some chip damage onto these front lines. And again, the attackers can afford more mistakes than the defenders, as always. Meanwhile, it does also look like the battle to... Oh man, this choke point is a frame rate killer. The dwarves are being attacked. What have we got here? Witch-Round Pikemen and Gundabad Guard trying to force their way through the dwarves, which is bold. Forcing your way through the dwarves is not the easiest of tasks, and they're immediately cutting off the point where they had finally managed to try and force their way through with a unit of Ironfoot Pikes. Maybe 2 units of Ironfoot Pikes actually, because that's a very dense formation. You can see that these Orc Marauders, the Witch-Round Pikemen, it is a very fractured front line at this point because of the Gundabad push. And again, these Ironfoot Warriors. There's Guardians of Khan Doom in here as well, so this is a pretty big commitment from Bobo. So he does need to make this stick. He needs to send forward more units. Because again, even though it's only basic Ironfoot units that have been sent forward, the dwarves are so good at holding a line. So have we got any reinforcements on the way? Got some Númenórean Shadow Guard. Again, Númenórean Shadow Guard might not be the best thing. Again, the Rudauer Savages would have been the ideal unit to use as sort of filler over here. Again, the High Elves are being avoided like the plague, and why not? You know, they retreated up onto their hill, so let them stay there, I say. Just engage where you want. Now, the Sons of Durin are on the front line. It's hard to tell. But yeah, you can see individually the very elite unit there with their mighty warhammers being backed up by the pikes. The Sons of Durin are an ideal unit to face down the infantry of Isengard, Gundabad with. Although, to be fair, they're pretty good against Isengard as well, with their armour-piercing values being very high. And of course, one of the best shock units in the game. Better, in my opinion, than the Witch-Round Hammer Guard, which would be the nearest equivalent for the attackers. You can see there's a lot of Dwarven pikes coming down, so the Dwarves really forcing back this aggressive push up the centre by the Gundabad army, and this could be the victory that the defenders need. Because if we go back over to here, well, to be honest, these units of Orc Marauders are a little bit too passive for my liking. They should be helping these Númenórean Shadow Guard, they should be engaging, they should be attacking on all fronts. Meanwhile, if we look over here, the Black Uruks of the mountains and the Snow Trolls being sent forth into this area here. There's also some Guardians of Khan Doom. But again, these Arnor pikemen, even in spite of the beating they've taken, the Arnorian pikemen are still able to put up a decent fight over here. These Snow Trolls, though, are now getting into the mix, and the Snow Trolls could start dealing a lot of damage. When backed up, you know, Black Uruks and Guardians of Khan Doom are good units to send forward. But they need more assistance, I think. They need more men over here. They need the Orc Marauders really to start beginning their attack, to really offer some meat to this attack. You can see there's still some areas which they're having to cover, and this is the problem that Arnor have. They have to cover multiple angles with units, so several units are just sort of doing nothing. Some of these Goblin Trackers are sort of moving forward. These Arnorians sort of moving their line back a little bit. Still a bit of skirmish fire coming in as well from the Númenórean Shadow Guard. A bit of fire arrows. Now here's a problem that the defenders will have. The catapult. Again, the catapult can scarcely miss here, because even if it overshoots, it's going to hit the men behind it. And I think the Arnorians realise the doom that is being brought upon them here. There's also the Blackwatch Legion, so if they really start to struggle with the Arnorian pikes, the Blackwatch Legion can just be sent to bulldoze their way through them. Although the catapult's doing its little shimmy, which means it's worthless to me. getting no decent shots here. The Orc Marauders, I suppose that's why the Orc Marauders are here. They're just sort of forcing the Arnorians to guard each one, but again, they should have at least sent forward this unit of Orc Marauders to help the Númenórean Shadow Guard, not the Shield Guard. Meanwhile, you can see over here that this attack has basically gone south pretty quickly. The Snow Trolls were cut down. There are elite units over here. The dismounted Dunedain Knights have taken only a few losses to that Troll attack. And again, Goblin Trackers that are out of ammunition are not going to turn this fight around. So in spite of the fact that Arnor set up in a very odd way, they have managed to weather the initial storm, but eventually their infantry will be completely overwhelmed. It just matters on how many they're able to take with them. We go back over to the central fight, the frame rate killer itself. Let's have a look. You can see that from the way the line is bowing, it means that the dwarves are forcing their way forward. There are Rudar Savages being committed forward now, which is the ideal sort of lower tier unit to send against the dwarves. We also have the Rudar Heavy Pikes in here, as well as the Witch Realm Pikemen. So it is a battle between pikes. This is a long and atrocious battle in the middle here. This is where all of the sort of saved up skirmishers of Arnor really need to start making up for their mistakes, to be honest with you, because they need to get a lot of kills to make this retreat worth it, because they have lost a lot of men as a result of their full retreat early on in the game, the defenders. Meanwhile, these Troll Slayers immediately coming under arrow fire, which is the right thing to do. They may have HP, but they don't have much armour. They do have their axes out, however, so that probably means they're out of ammunition, which means they should be committed to melee soon. If a unit's just being skirmished down like this, just send them into the melee. There's no point in leaving them back here just to be shot, especially not if they're an elite unit. See that these Rudar Savages, defeat is almost a certainty for them. The men of Rudar will very soon get to strike out on their own. There's also some Khazad units over here, some Khazad Orc Hunters, and being sent forward here, the Dunedain Troll Slayers, so this is a very solid front line. And again, Gundabad, the arrows are flying in all directions. Let's have a look at the percentages of kills. Dead even, which is good for the attackers, because late on that often swings pretty massively in favour of the attackers. Meanwhile, we can see over here that Rudar Savages are also being committed forward to try and assault this line. Again, they will do pretty well. They'll trade pretty efficiently with stuff like Arnorian Peacekeepers and Arthedain Man-at-Arms, but the Dunedain Knights will just dumpster them. And they are also under skirmish fire, it would seem. So victory seems certain for the Arnorians. Again, I still think the attackers should have been much more aggressive against Arnor here. They had them pinned. They could have crushed them, I think. But we shall see. Meanwhile, let's have a look over here. These Mountain Uruk Archers, victory seems certain. This very depleted unit of Arnorian Peacekeepers is about to give up the Ghost, which is good for the attackers. Let's have a look. Mountain Uruk Pikes are sort of repositioning. A healthy unit of Mountain Uruk Pikes at that. Meanwhile, we do have a unit of Snow Trolls over here. I would definitely not send them into that meat grinder in the middle, because they'll be largely wasted there. Meanwhile, the Blackwatch Legion are coming forward, and the Blackwatch Legion are exactly what is needed to finally break the back of this defence somewhere. Meanwhile, these Dunedain Knights are about to receive a charge from the Snow Trolls, going right through the Snow Trolls and into the Gate Guards. Troll charges are pretty lethal, and I think that they are going to be getting more powerful in the next patch to sort of make up for the fact that Trolls tend to die pretty quickly. Meanwhile, finally we can see these Orc Marauders and these Black Uruks being sent into position, and these Blackwatch Legion. So this is the area which should finally see the Arnorian resolve start to falter. Meanwhile, these Snow Trolls. Defeat still seems certain, but there are still 20 of them. And they are coming back. And these Arnor Gate Guards are going to take even more losses to these Trolls. This unit of Arthedain Man-at-Arms sort of falling back. The Mountain Uruk Pikes reinforcing the Rudar Berserkers. Heavy Goblin Infantry also. There's a lot more trash over here being sent forward, but the Arnorians still need to engage it. And finally we're seeing every avenue of attack being exploited by the attackers, with the Misty Mountains led by Master Blaster and the Orcs of Gundabad by Arcturus leading the way. The Mountain Uruk Archers engaging this very depleted unit of Arnorian Pikemen. This unit of Peacekeepers and Pikemen is having to stay there because of the presence of those Marauders. And now we can see that the Trolls and the Blackwatch Legion together are just going to march forward, using their mass, backed up by the fodder of the Orc Marauders. The ideal attacking push here, and defeat seems certain for the dismounted Dunedain Knights and what is left of the Arnor Gate Guards. The Trolls really did a number on those Arnor Gate Guards when they managed to single them out. And Trolls are a very good anti-pike unit. The Misty Mountains have got a lot of good anti-pike options, the Blackwatch Legion, and their plentiful varieties of Trolls. So that is one area in which the Misty Mountains are good. I know that they're not really thought of particularly highly, but they do have their options. Dismounted Dunedain Knight, he's getting back up after being knocked over by the advancing Blackwatch Legion with their mighty tower shields. They are getting shot in the back by Arnorian heavy archers. The Ironfoot crossbows will be a much more deadly target for them. And over here, of course, they are now engaging on this front as well. These Orc Marauders. Victory is a distinct possibility, amazingly. That should change to the other way in a moment. Although they are going to be reinforced by another unit of Orc Marauders. Yeah, this is where the Arnorian infantry will start to falter. Over here, the Arnorians, well, that frame rate though. The Arnorians were starting to really push back against them, but with the committal of these Rudar Berserkers, that should stabilise this line, particularly when they're backed up by that many trash units. So yeah, the Arnorian infantry, things are not looking good. Interestingly enough, we can actually see the Ironfoot Guard taking a nice battering there. The Dragon Slayers have taken some losses to their unit. Again, if I were them, I would have retreated these guys behind something. Purely because, like, it's going to take the attackers a while to sort of charge up this hill. I mean, the Trolls might be able to close the distance pretty quickly. But even so, losing these Dragon Slayers might well be a crippling blow. Sons of the Fallen, Guards of Khazad-dûm. It would appear that Escal Nordi has essentially identified this sort of central position as where the battle will be won or lost, because he's sending forward more elite units. And as you can see, Froggy sent forward a lot of his elites to reinforce Bobo's initial attack, and that has turned this fight into the attacker's favour as well. The Rudar Berserkers and the Guardians of Khazad-dûm are such a lethal combination. They combine brute survivability with that nice armour-piercing damage of the Berserkers. The Trolls of Gundabad chasing down what little remains of the Knights of Umas. I'm amazed they're still alive, to be honest. And meanwhile, the High Elves sort of sitting pretty on their hill back there, just sort of, you know, hanging out. They're alright. I mean, at this point, the Dwarves and Arnor are in a bad way.
Half the enemy force remains.
And you can see just pushing past with elite units like the Guardians of Khazad-dûm, the Witch Realm Hammer Guard. Again, we'll see how well the Guards of Khazad-dûm can take a charge from the Witch Realm Hammers. The Witch Realm Hammers are so lethal off a charge. Ooh, what are they doing? Don't try and run away now, it's too late. Oh, they're marching. They're not braced. Although, to be fair, they are taking skirmish fire. And the Guards of Khazad-dûm are AP themselves. Sons of the Fallen taking on the Guardians of Khazad-dûm. Two more defensive-focused units, it must be said. Now let's go back over to the Arnorian front, where their buildings burn. Yeah, these dismounted Dunedain Knights and what's left of the Gate Guard just being pushed back by the Blackwatch Legion. Such a useful tool for the Misty Mountains. The Misty Mountains are going to desperately need something to replace that if it moves over to Gundabad, as I believe it will. Because I have seen the rosters for what is the intended factions, and the Blackwatch Legion are indeed moving over to Gundabad. The Misty Mountains are going to need something to replace them so badly, because at this point I would say they're arguably more important to them than the Blackback Mountain Berserkers, simply because their ability to bulldoze through stuff is something the Misty Mountains so desperately need. Meanwhile, if we look over here, another unit of Snow Trolls has come forward, and the Snow Trolls of Arcturus doing a heavy amount of damage to those Arnor Gate Guards, being backed up by a unit of Heavy Goblin Infantry and Mountain Uruk Archers. These elite pikes are finally being put to the sword, or the club, I guess, or cudgel, or whatever it is the Trolls use. Let's go and have a look over here. As you can see, the sheer weight of numbers, the AP from the Rudar Berserkers, and the Heavy Goblin Infantry providing the mass. The Arnorian defence is finally having its back broken. And they don't have a lot else to answer with it now. I mean, they're going to get recharged all over the place, and that does mean that this is the end for the Arnorians. I mean, at this point, I would just run these pikemen away. Try and save what you can. Oh, hello. We have a new front that has opened up. The Arnorian Heavy Archers going up against Orc Marauders. So definitely the fight of the wet noodles over here. The Arnorian Heavy Archers are going to win this simply because of sheer weight of numbers and the fact that they have the hill advantage. But again, it's another place that the defenders are being forced to fight in. Khazad warriors. Another unit of Khazad warriors.
Badly blooded. They have lost half their men.
I mean, there's a lot of men down there, Rudar Berserkers, which kind of need to stay there, otherwise the High Elves will counter-attack. What is going on over here? We can see that the dwarves, finally the Axemen of Erebor, they have managed to make Gundabad pay for this central position, but ultimately I don't think they've made them pay enough. You can see that the Dragon Slayers, again, the really elite core, these snow trolls have managed to sneak their way in behind the lines. They're going after the Elder Enway archers from the High Elves. Seeing them get smashed into a bloody paste gives me a great deal of satisfaction. So you go, trolls. Again, good play from Bobo there to sort of sneak his trolls in and around the enemy defence. There's also Rudar Heavy Pike sort of seeking shelter near to the cliff.
In the course of battle, but defeat seems almost certain.
What's this over here? Khazad warriors, these Mithril guardsmen, going over to try and help the Elder Enway archers, but it might be too late. I mean, the Elder Enway archers have taken some pretty substantial losses there, and they are also under skirmish fire from Numenor and Shadow Guard. And also the dwarves are not really particularly fast at the best of times, but charging uphill is not going to help their speed any. Let's have a look over here so we can see that the Rudar Berserkers are engaging the Guards of Khazad-dûm. The Guards of Khazad-dûm are a very high tier unit, they will win that, but the Rudar Berserkers, if they're backed up quickly, particularly by Hammer Guard, which it does look like they're going to be, this fight could turn around, and the dwarves are running out of things to defend with here. We shall see. We have passed the halfway point, and at this point I would have to place the advantage squarely in the attacker's favour. They are 3% ahead already. And the saving grace of the defenders, which would have been all of these really elite dwarven units, are being forced to be committed into a fight that they will win. But ultimately I think they're going to find themselves surrounded pretty soon, because if you look over here, the Arnorians have been squashed. Have a look over here. I mean, there's a few individual Dunedain Knights which are just being put to the sword. And then over here, victory was theirs over here. And then fighting back to back, we have the final pocket of genuine Arnorian resistance down here, which Rudar Berserkers attacking into the backs of these Arnorian peacekeepers means that they are going to fall away pretty quickly. Heavy Goblin infantry pinning them from the front. There is no escape for the Arnorians now. It is a very good settlement though, this map. I do like Gundabad as a map. Over here, Heavy Goblin infantry, Blackback Mountain Berserkers. That's going to be something that they're really going to struggle with in the late game. The defenders, I mean. These Mountaineer Pikes also going to be sent forward. What is this? These are Blackback Berserkers. Defeat seems certain for the Blackback Berserkers. That's impressive work from the Arnorian Heavy Archers. I imagine that will pretty quickly turn around. Especially now that they're being backed up by a unit of Pikemen. Pikemen are pretty good for slowly forcing your way up a hill. And now defeat seems certain. Blackback Berserker is such a savage unit. Oh dear, and a rear charge. A rear charge from a depleted unit of Snow Trolls, but that's still going to leave the defensive line here very exposed indeed. They honestly may as well leave the Trolls in this battle as well. Just get a lot of kills, force their way through this choke point quickly. And then the Dwarves will be in genuine trouble, because they don't have enough elite units to sort of cover every angle. What's going on over here, I wonder? Unit of Rudar Berserkers? Unit of Witch Realm Inquisitors. They need to be careful. They could be skirmished down, and losing the general could still prove to be a bit of a problem. The Dunedain Bodyguard again. What is going on up here? So we do have some Arnorian units, the Dunedain Bodyguard, Noritino Warriors. We've got some Smiths, some Noldor. But yeah, there's only one Arnorian unit over here. Interesting. The biggest line battle we have at the moment is an elite fight between all of the Dwarven elites, which again, that's a very scary front line to look at. Sons of the Fallen, 2 units of Guards of Khazad-dûm, the Dragon Slayers are in there, some Khazad Warriors as well, just adding a few more numbers, and then all of the Gundabad elites as well. They're a little bit more haggard though, because they've had to force their way through one defence already. Can the Dwarves hold? That is the question. They actually need to kill these guys off pretty quickly, otherwise they will find themselves surrounded. And here, reinforcing the front line, making sure that they will not be able to get this job done quickly, are the Rudar Heavy Pikes. It's impossible to kill Pikes quickly from the front unless you try and force your way through them, which the Dwarves can't really afford to be bold with their mass pushes at this point. Yep, the Arnorians. Destroyed over here. the final vestiges of their defence, these Arnorian peacekeepers. The Rudar Berserkers, ideally placed to deal with this. I do like the Rudar Berserkers. Honestly, one of my favourite units in the game at the moment. Simply because they perform so well for their cost. Again, you can find better infantry units. Their stats are not particularly high, but the 2 HP, the AP damage they do, it makes them the ideal support unit when you're really sending forward a solid, strong attack. And they've been used very well by the attackers. So I think the attackers have played very well. There have been a few strange decisions, like not finishing off that cavalry when they could. But ultimately, I think they've done everything they needed to. The defenders, on the other hand, have not really had the best showing so far. I think the way the Arnorians pulled back all their skirmishers was probably what's going to lead to their ultimate demise in this battle. Now we can see these Blackback Berserkers. These Ironfoot Guard are not really in the ideal formation, and they are going to find themselves overrun and overwhelmed by Blackback Mountain Berserkers, which again, they're hugely high attack values. Going to put these guys to the sword pretty quickly. The Ironfoot Guard, one of the few dwarven units to not have AP, although, to be honest, the Blackback Berserkers don't have any armour. Despite their look, it looks like they have armour, but they actually don't. There's a lot of pikemen coming up here as well, and the catapult moving forth. What is going on over here? See the Rudar Berserkers. Are they going to pounce on these dwarven noblemen? Are they going to notice these dwarves? Because this could be this could be pretty key. If they can take out the dwarven general here. And yes, they have seen them, I think. Actually, what are they doing? Are they not going to try and assassinate the dwarven general? No, they're just going to move up the hill. I mean, surely the Witch Realm Inquisitors are going to try and charge the dwarven general to death. Or are they? They are not. They are going to advance up the hill and try and recharge the dwarven elites, I think. Or they're just going to sort of block this to make sure. I mean, surely they've got to charge this unit. It's the dwarven general. Yes, they are. Again, what are they doing? Charge, kill, maim, destroy. The dwarven general is escaping before your very eyes. He's not exactly lightning quick, and they're just walking after him. Here we go, finally. No. What are they doing? This is madness. And now they're... I'm very confused. What on earth is Arcturus doing? Is he just sort of trying to give the dwarves some encouragement, like, you better run? He did it again. I'm so confused. Well, that was failure. Complete failure. I'm very disappointed. They could have had the dwarven general there. The combination of the Rudar Berserkers and the Witch Realm Inquisitors, they could have destroyed him. And they don't really need to flank around with any more men over here. They're already going to be flanking up the other side in a massive way, and they're going to be able to surround the dwarves. I fail to see the logic here. Well, regardless, Bobo has sent forward his Rudar Berserkers to recharge over here. He's going to kill these 9 Elder Runway Archers a little bit quicker than they otherwise would have. Meanwhile, you see over here, this massive flanking force would have been more than enough to wipe out the dwarves. However, now the dwarven noblemen have managed to escape, and they're going to be able to help the High Elves put up their last stand, which I do still think that the attackers should probably still win this. But if they lose by just a few men, that could well prove to be the reason why. If we look at the percentages of kills, the attackers are now 4% ahead, so they have managed to extend their lead just a little bit. This flanking force, what is this? Oh dear. Yeah. Good old Medieval 2. The siege weaponry. Plummeting itself to its death. And this essentially makes the siege piece worthless now, because even if they try and move this one siege weaponry that isn't off the hill forwards, these two will try and follow it, and it's going to mess up the pathfinding completely. I don't think there's a way to fix that either. Look at that. That's so ridiculous. People will say that modern Total War games are more buggy. They've always been buggy messes. Medieval 2 simply doesn't show it much anymore because it's so old. And while we can see these Numenorian Shadow Guard moving forward, it remains to be seen what happens next. These Ironfoot Guard going to be engaging with these Rudar Berserkers, which could have been used to kill off King Dane. As it is, though, all of the generals are now concentrated in that top corner of the map. Balance of forces is evenly matched. I would actually kind of expect the Rudar Berserkers to win this one, simply because of that AP damage, and also the fact that they're not really in a... The Ironfoot Guard are not really in the best sort of battle formation.
They have lost half their men.
Having said that, this Dwarven advance is relentless. The flanking force from the Misty Mountains actually needs to hurry up, because the Rudar Berserkers are really the only unit that are here in genuine numbers now. Although there are Witchround Blackguard on the front line as well. Victory is almost a certainty, yeah. But I would still say that the Misty Mountains need to squash this Dwarven resistance quickly.
Pray something changes in the course of battle, for defeat seems almost certain.
And as if he heard me, Master Blaster is sending forward his Blackback Berserkers. He needs to charge them in. They're exactly the sort of thing that's needed. The Dwarven AP is not too good against them, and they have huge attack values. What are they doing? Charge! Attack! Don't form up. You don't need to. They need to get into here. They need to get into the Khazad warriors. Instead, it looks like they're just going to be charging into the backs of the Rudar Berserkers. This isn't really where they're best positioned. I'm complaining a lot about the tactics today, aren't I? But I feel like I'm justified in that. There's some very odd decisions being made. Meanwhile, over here, the Dragon Slayers, despite taking that artillery fire, are still alive in some capacity. But these Witchround Blackguard, they are going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Again, or the log that breaks the camel's back, because they are a very elite unit indeed. Now there's some pikes being sent down, and again, the attackers are going to do the right thing here and just bleed the defenders out. Make sure that these units on the periphery are all destroyed before mounting their final assault on the High Elven position. I think the attackers have this now, though. Balance of power, yeah, 7% ahead. Those High Elven elites are going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting, but they don't have as many elites as the dwarves have. They've got the Noldor Elders, the Smiths of Eregion, and the 2 units of Imladris Guards. The rest of their army is honestly just kind of basic units, like the Imladris Storm Guard. The Dunedain Bodyguard and the Dwarven Noblemen are over there, but that's not going to be enough, I think. If they were going to retreat over there en masse, they should have done so with more of the Dwarven elites, but the Dwarven elites had to be committed down here. Some Goblin Trackers, some Numenorian Shadow Guard. Do they still have ammunition? Well, they hid, so I doubt it. Now the Rudar Berserkers and the Blackback Berserkers coming in here, and it's going to be the final stand of the dwarves. The Mithril Guardsmen. You can see the runes on their shoulder armour, their pauldrons. Even a unit as tough as them is not going to be able to weather this storm, unfortunately. You can see the Witchround Blackguard leading the way, with the men of Rudar backing them up. Interesting. The Dragon Slayers. I'm still not sure why they're more expensive than the Mithril Guard. I still think that the only possible explanation is that they have more mats. Because they have worse stats. It's very odd. Very odd indeed. Mithril Guard. Only 3 of them remaining. This is going to be the end. The end of days. Well played by the attackers. They managed to diffuse the outer defences reasonably well. I still think those Witchround Inquisitors should have charged those Dwarven Noblemen. I'm not sure why they opted for that sort of, I think I'll charge, no I won't, I think I'll charge, no I won't. That's really the only extremely strange decision I remember. The Witchround Inquisitors have actually been the unit that I'd say have been used the least effectively by the attackers so far. They could have finished off those knights quickly, they could have finished off the Dwarven General, and they chose not to. Most strange. There's still more Rudar Berserkers. The men of Rudar are really forming the backbones of these Gundabad armies and doing very well. Gundabad need to make the most of this because very soon, of course, they will not have access to the Men of Rudour in their roster anymore. But yes, this is the end. And I think I will make a little bit of a cut here because there's still some fighting going on over here. Where are the dwarves? Well, that's it. The celebrations can begin. Actually, no, they're just bracing. But I think I will make a bit of a cut here because it will take the attackers some time to walk their armies into the formation they desire. So, a little bit of a cut, and then we shall see the final stand of the High Elves. Now, this is quite brazen, I must say. These Númenórean Shadow Guard have come right up and are going to fire point blank into the Imladris Guards. And I think the Elves could have reacted a little bit more quickly, to be honest with you, but they are now finally being chased off. The Elves should have the skirmish power to deal with them as well. But again, that's a lot of forces. But there was one thing that I forgot about, and that is the Elven Catapult. Could that yet pull it back? With this one choke point, it might be able to. But I don't know, Catapults are temperamental, and the High Elven Catapult has already done damage to his own army by hitting those Quindi. So we shall see if it can redeem itself. These Noratino warriors chasing the Goblin Trackers and the Númenórean Shadow Guard down the hill. Almost all of those arrows are firing into the hillside and not into the Imladris Guards. These Goblin Trackers are going to find themselves very quickly destroyed by Noratino warriors. I actually don't know who would win in melee after Shadow Guard and Noratino warriors. I think it would probably be the Shadow Guard, but they are fighting uphill, so that might make all the difference. We shall see, because the Noratino warriors are indeed going to engage with them, and the attackers still just marching forward. They got a lot of men left, a lot of elites buried in there as well, and the gap is now 10%, so the catapult really does need to do some extremely heavy lifting in order to bring this fight back. Will the attackers have victory? These Noratino warriors fighting hard to try and defuse one of the skirmish threats that remain for the attackers. And the Númenórean Shadow Guard defeat. The balance of forces is evenly matched, so yeah, if the hill wasn't here, the Noratino warriors would be losing this more heavily. Honestly, with how slowly the rest of the attackers' armies were moving forward, they could have sent forward a unit of more genuine quality to destroy these Shadow Guard more quickly. The Dunedain bodyguard are being moved forward now, but again, might be a little bit too late. Because the Noratino warriors will need backup if they're to finish this job. And the Dunedain bodyguard, of course, will oblige. The Dunedain bodyguard are a much better unit in melee than the Shadow Guard, and the Shadow Guard, sensing this, proceed to run away. Which is exactly what they should do. They should absolutely not pursue the Shadow Guard because they are sort of coaxing them further and further down the hill into a melee fight that these units will not win. These Noratino warriors should fall back as well because every man is going to be important in this final defence. Catapult is here, the Noratino warriors. Elder-Runway archers that still have ammunition. The Nolder elders as well. But I don't know. The attackers just have too much left, I think. They were not made to pay in the outer defences as much as they should have, and now in the late game this is where the daunting realisation dawns on the defenders, and that is that they won't have enough left to weather this storm. The Númenórean Shadow Guard, however, the Goblin Trackers are wavering. These Dunedain bodyguard need to retreat. These pikes are coming up the hill. The pikes are going to be able to pin them in position, and then more elite units are going to be able to be sent forward. Like, look at this, Guardians of Khan Doom, Rudour Berserkers, Black Uruks. Nope. The Dunedain bodyguard are going to charge into these pikemen. Pikes will never be destroyed quickly. If you're hoping to destroy this single unit of pikes quickly, it's not really going to happen. When the pikes manage to drop down and get into formation, and these Dunedain bodyguard are going to be required for the defence in the rear, and if these black-backed berserkers chose to, they could come forward and they could destroy these Dunedain bodyguard. Although, to be fair, the Dunedain bodyguard have done a better job at dealing with these pikes than I would have given them credit for. So, it has come to this. Let's have a look here. Here comes the first wave of the attackers. Pretty much they're going to try and come forward with a lot of their elites. Guardians of Khan Doom, Rudour Berserkers, Black Uruks, Blackback Mountain Berserkers. There's also some less elite units here, so some heavy Goblin infantry providing some fodder. But if I were the attackers, I would just move in for the kill. The Dunedain bodyguard finally retreating. These Rudar pikes. Also got some Witch Realm Scourge Raiders taunting. These Imladris guards are going to have to hold the line as well. The Dwarven Nobleman coming out of the building. Coming out of the tavern, no less. You can see the tavern. The dwarves have decided that enough drinking has been done. And that they will go forth to the front lines for their last stand. And probably their demise. This catapult is... It'd be interesting to see if it can actually hit. Because this is a pretty juicy clump of men that the catapult could go after. If it was able. Rudar heavy pikes. This unit of Noritino warriors is going to find itself crushed underfoot. So, as we enter the final 10,000 frames, this is going to be it. Final assault here on Mount GUNDABAD. We shall see. I mean, the defenders can put up a decent fight here. I mean, they have managed to pull it back by a single percentage point, but I ultimately still think that with the amount of elites that the attacks have, these Witch Realm Blackguard, Guardians of Khan Doom, Blackwatch Legion, I don't think the defenders have much of a hope here. Especially not if they're leaving these pikemen to try and hold the line all by their lonesome. Because the Blackwatch Legion will just bulldoze their way through them with ease. They're going to need the backup of the Elder Runway Spearmen and the Imladris Stormguard and the Dwarven Noblemen badly. But it seems like the defenders, the defenders have been far too eager to retreat further and further in this match. And I think that will be their downfall. Because they retreated right from the off, away from the initial 5 choke points. And that ultimately will probably lead to their end. And they're sending forward the pikes. Which again, being aggressive is usually something I commend, but sending forward pikes into Blackwatch Legion... Guardians of Khan Doom as well. Yeah, this is not good. This is not good for the defenders. And the catapult is here. The catapult needs to get ready to attack, because this is where the swarm is starting to come forward. The Imladris guards being caught horribly out of position. That was another major mistake. Again, I don't want to sound too mean, but the defenders have really messed it up here on several occasions in this battle. This unit of Imladris Guards balance forces is evenly matched. What are these units doing back here? They're just stood around, doing nothing. When their pikes, they're the one unit that could be able to hold back this tide of men if they were backed up, is just being slaughtered. I'm disappointed. Disappointed in the way the defenders have played this one, to be honest with you. Here comes the final assault though, the pure push. The attackers deserve to win, to be honest with you. The attackers have played this very well. They've noted the weaknesses in what the defenders were doing, and they took advantage of them, which is all you can ask. That unit of Imladris guards just got stomped. Overrun and overwhelmed. And again, just backing off into a corner. Shameful display. And these Alderaan archers are not firing. At this point, I would suggest that this player may be timed out. I'll have to ask about that, because I don't believe that this catapult would have been idle, that these archers would have been idle. But then he sent forward his pikemen, so he can't have been idle. How confusing. How confusing indeed. But yeah, the attackers are going to take this one. Attackers are going to take this one fairly comfortably in the end, it would seem. And the battle was there for the defenders to win, I think. I think in this sort of settlement that has a lot of choke points, a lot of hills for you to take advantage of, you can beat numerically superior forces. But they really didn't take advantage of their positions, and instead they allowed the attackers to make advantage of their own skirmishers. Which, when you're letting GUNDABAD out-skirmish you, there's a major problem. The Goblin Trackers proving to be a very strong unit. We've got some Sindar Blade Masters hidden here in the back, as well as some Dunedain Bodyguard. Here come the Rudar Berserkers. As a single unit, they've probably been the MVPs. They've done a very good job indeed throughout most of this battle. Look at this, look at them as they come forward. Smiths of Eregion. all of these back positions completely useless, because they're just going to be overwhelmed just as quickly as their front position was. Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a flaccid end to this map, to be honest with you. I was expecting the High Elves to put up a bit more of a fight than this, but unfortunately they've been horribly mismanaged and mispositioned. You can see that these Madra Storm Guard are doing their best to hold the line. And the Elder Runaway Spearmen being attacked in the back by Witch Realm Blackguard, and the Smiths of Aragia are like, no, we're not going to come to your aid. We're just going to sit back. And again, these Dwarven Noblemen, they could have tried to help on the front line, but instead they too showed rampant cowardice. The Dunedain Bodyguard were more excuse me, were more aggressive, but in the end, going to be overwhelmed. Yeah, the High Elven player has got to be out. Has got to be AFK, because these units are just stood here doing absolutely bugger all. Very disappointing. Blackback Mountain Berserkers. Yeah, really, if
something changes in the course of battle, for defeat seems almost certain.
So as the Orcs pour forward, let's talk about what the defenders could have done differently. Obviously, the main factors here that I've mentioned are Arnor pulling back all of their skirmishers and allowing their infantry to be skirmished down was a major problem. You know, they absolutely should have kept some of their skirmishers forward. The defenders were far too eager to retreat to the really defensible positions at the back, when what they really should have done is, I think, defended the outer choke points with everything that the High Elves and the Arnorians had, and then used the Knights of Anuminos out in the plains over there in the background to really do some nice damage. But in the end, the Knights of Anuminos didn't get as many kills as they could have done. The Arnor Gate Guards were skirmished down far too easily, the High Elves were too eager to retreat as well, and then in the end, it would appear at least that Brainy Smurf timed out, crashed, or something, and this led to his entire army basically being useless here in the last stand. And then Askel Nordia, I mean, there wasn't much he could have done differently, to be fair. Most of his forces were positioned at the back for a reason, I would assume. And his elites, they held the line valiantly, but ultimately, because of what happened elsewhere in the battle, they were not going to be able to sort of manage to turn this fight around all by their lonesome. And so yeah, that's basically it. Other than that, I think the attackers played very well. Again, the Witch Realm Inquisitors could have been used to slightly better effect, I think, but ultimately, apart from that, the attackers did everything right. And against a rather disorganised defence, I must be honest, there was only one way this battle was going to go. Usually the attackers will win, but usually not quite so convincingly. Looks like it's going to be around the 20% mark that the attackers are going to win this one by. It's a good scenario though. I just think if the defenders managed to organise themselves a little better, they would have stood much more of a chance. I do still think that the attackers will start with a natural advantage in a situation where they have an army advantage, and the armies are all pretty decent in terms of quality. There's no fodder in there. See these Noldor Elder Nobles. Victory seems certain. These Dwarven Noblemen falling back into the final 5,000 frames. These Sindar Blade Masters. The mass into this little marketplace. The Orcs ravaging it. Sindar Blade Masters. These Sindar Blade Masters retreated though. So this leads me to believe that the High Elves are still being controlled in some way, which doesn't make any sense because they were mismanaged so horribly in this last third that I refuse to believe Brainy Smurf would play so badly here. Because I've seen him play, he's a good player. There's no way he would perform this badly. Rudar Berserkers. Oh my, we have a flashing canopy. The torches of the men around them. Look at all those orcs. Still pouring up the hill, and still not all of them were committed. Still more back there. The catapult was not able to be used in the late game. We never got any juicy artillery shots. And that's a real shame. We got a few, well, the best artillery shot we honestly saw was a bit of friendly fire. Misty Mountains catapult managed to get some nice hits on the Dragon Slayers, but even so, that was over the course of a longer period of time. Here we can see the heavy goblin infantry pouring forth. but still in pretty good health, the Rudar Berserkers, leading the way as they have done throughout most of the battle. Sindar Blade Masters, very highly skilled unit. They remind me a lot of the Hashari and how they function, only they are less money, they're 100 less florins, so they are better value for money. They will be a Lothlorien only unit in the next patch, of course. Lothlorien are looking very strong in the next patch, actually. They could go from being the weakest Elven faction to the strongest, if my suspicions are correct. A lot of that is opinion based though. How you like to play. See these trolls. Interesting enough, defeat seems certain for the Orc Bodyguards, are you sure? Defeat is a distinct possibility for the Sindar Blade Masters. Really? I never would have guessed. I think it's about time we actually turned it up to times 2 speed, because the Noldor Elders and the Dwarven Noblemen, when they're sort of cowering in a corner like this, will last quite a long time, but ultimately their fate is sealed. So yeah, let me know what you thought of this scenario in the comments, of course. And also to answer a few questions here at the end while the foregone conclusion plays itself out. Yes, I will be doing the faction overviews when the new patch comes out. I will be doing them first as well. I will be doing them sort of pretty much immediately when the patch comes out. I want to get to doing them very quickly. And then after all of them are done, after I've cycled through all the factions, then I will be doing some top 10s again. And I'm eager to get into the faction overviews and the top 10s again, because that was what initially my channel was. Now it's been basically entirely battle replays ever since sort of summer. Is that a vacuum cleaner in the background? I do apologise.
Noble allies have lost their leader. Without their general, they may something changes in the course of battle.
At least it's near to the end of the battle, I suppose. Good lord. What a grind fest. I'm not going to subject you to the horrors of time 6. You can actually see that this building isn't even solid. But it does go to show how strong the Noldor Elder Nobles are at the very least. Able to stand against such. Victory is almost a certainty for them as well. Now the Bountiful is dealing with a match. Now they're dealing with more units of genuine quality. It's a big map, this as well. As I said, the previous replay I got sent on this was 90,000 frames, and it was a pitch battle as well, so both of them held bits of the city, so it wasn't like this where you could just camp. So yeah, there were clearly some shenanigans going on there, which I wanted no part of. Finally we have the turnaround here, backed into a corner, trapped like rats. Let's go back to times 2 speed.
Pray something changes in the course of battle, for defeat seems almost certain.
Yeah, so you keep saying, Dwarven Announcer. Is this Orc Bodyguard?
Our army is tiring.
Heavy Goblin Infantry. There's still Heavy Goblin Infantry alive at the end. That's not something you often see in an Orc assault on a settlement. There's a lot of pikes there as well. The Mountaineeric pikes perform their job very well. A lot of the Gundabad pikes were of course expended on that meat grinder in the middle. But alas, I still like this scenario, even though I would say the defenders, there's a lot of room for improvement with how the defenders approach this battle.
Our general lies slain upon the
There goes King Dane. Slain in the back garden of the tavern. Or the beer garden, I should say. An appropriate place for a Dwarven general to lay down his life, I would say. Yes, the final 1,000 frames. As we finally get in there, I'd be interested to see how many kills each of the defenders got. The High Elves, I imagine, would have a pretty shocking kill total by the end of this, at least in comparison to their allies. Simply because they were completely overwhelmed here at the end, and this is where most of their elite units were. We got no catapult action. I'm still a bit disappointed about that. But yes, I guess the Orcs take Gundabad after all. So Gundabad will be established as an evil power.
Without their general, they may lose. Our enemies have
there goes Elrond.
Victory from us like thieves in the night.
I wouldn't say like thieves in the night. They won it honourably. And yeah, the High Elven kill total was noticeably worse than his allies. The Arnorians getting marginally more than the Dwarves, but again, both of them were sort of in the fight for longer than the High Elves were. As for the attackers, the Misty Mountains doing a decent job. I would say that Arcturos and probably Bobo. I don't know, actually. I don't know whether Bobo or Froggy would have got the most kills. Regardless, it doesn't matter. The sort of the 2-and-2 approach that the attackers took was very good. And again, individually, the Dwarven unit's getting a lot of kills against 726 for the Sons of Durin, but ultimately they were just completely overwhelmed. They couldn't hold all on their lonesome. And again, some of their elite units didn't do quite so well, like Guards of Khazad-dûm. 194 in this sort of situation is not actually a decent kill total for them. You expect more from your units, but even so, 726 for a single unit is a lot. And the Dwarven Noblemen, despite the fact they were backed into a corner there at the very end, 413 is still a lot of kills. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this scenario. I hope you'll join me for whatever's next, and I hope you will vote for this as your mod of the year in 2017. I don't know what the next battle will be. In all likelihood, it will probably be another scenario, because I do like showing these off a little bit more, because they're a little bit more structured. But who knows what it will be. I hope you'll join me for whatever it is regardless.